Hi, I'm Tom Stephenson, and welcome to Construction Project Management Tips. Today we're going to be talking about team development. And specifically, we're going to be talking about Lencioni's The Five Dysfunctions of a Team, and we're going to add how to avoid and fix them related to the construction industry. Patrick Lencioni wrote this book, The Five Dysfunctions of a Team, and it's a very, very popular book. I'll probably do a book Books That Makes You Better review of the book, but today I just want to focus on the five dysfunctions and what we can do about them and relate it to team development in construction. So his five dysfunctions are absence of trust, fear of conflict, lack of commitment, avoidance of accountability, and dysfunction 5, inattention to results. These are the five that he gets into, and the book actually does kind of a fable the way it's written, so it's got really good examples of how the dysfunctions apply to a team. But today I want to kind of also relate it to the construction sector. And in previous videos, you know that I've talked about Michael Gerber's E-Myth and the aspect of working in a business and not on the business. Well, today we'll talk a little bit about working in the project versus on the project. And team development is all about working on the project and the team that's going to be running the project. It becomes very important that we develop an effective team when we run construction projects. We want to make sure that when we're working on the project, that means things like coaching, team development, providing direction, anticipating potential problems so that you're not in constant reactive mode, and really developing and cultivating that relationship with your PM team, the project managers, the site supers, the forepersons, all of the trade partners, vendors that collaborate on a typical construction project. So we want to make sure that we're working on the right things in the right sequence and monitoring the project. So of course there is the technical side that we've mentioned, but today we're going to focus on the project work. So Lencioni talks about dysfunction 1, absence of trust. And in my mind, if you don't have trust within the team, it's going to be very dysfunctional, and the other parts are going to be very hard to build upon. So a core foundation is really trying to build that trust. And you need to be comfortable with each other. You need to be willing to expose some of your weaknesses. If you're kind of hiding that you don't know something, then that makes other parties think that you do know something, and perhaps then there's this expectation that you're going to do something and you don't do it, right? So there's this huge knowledge base that we have on projects and construction project teams that we don't always tap into effectively. So we want to be able to be vulnerable to each other. We want to be able to identify skill deficiencies. So that means that we can shore people up where somebody has a strength and somebody has a weakness, particularly on the core project team where we're working collaboratively together. If somebody has a weakness and they don't really let the other party know because they're nervous, they don't trust the other party, they might take advantage of them, then that really puts us in vulnerable positions, right? So you can usually look at all of these dysfunctions that he discusses, and you can usually just flip them around to think about how it could be better and how we could improve upon trust levels. And you can also see if we don't trust each other, this could lead to catastrophic errors, safety mistakes on construction projects as well. So one of the things that Lencioni talks about in his book, he talks about just a simple exercise. And what I like about the book, he gives a number of sort of examples, but just a sort of icebreaker that when you're starting a project, you actually have some team building exercises where you just go around the room and you actually, ask some pretty easy questions. How many brothers and sisters do you have? What was your first job? Did you work at Starbucks as a barista? What was your first job? What was your worst job and why? Hometown, are you from, a major city like Toronto or New York or, Barcelona, wherever that might be? And that sort of gives people a sense of cultural background and where your thoughts may be. Unique challenges that you faced in your life, So getting these things, they're kind of getting people to warm up, have empathy perhaps for you, and break the ice. And you relate to people more on a personal level. If you never do that, you're kind of, stuck in this sort of technical project level and you really haven't broken the ice. It's nice to have a relationship start off on the right foot. So first thing, right off the bat, have some trust building exercises that help along that way. Cultivating and encouraging healthy interpersonal relationships, connection-based conversations. These are things that you want to cultivate to build trust. Showing up as yourself, being authentic about what you say, not sort of being this other person with this different persona that people don't really know is not you. Having some team building exercises, events, lunches, dinners, personal celebrations, share aspirations and challenges that you've had. So if some people are interested, as an example, of getting their PMP designation or CM Lean designation, it's good to know those things and where people's interests are. And learning together. And that's always a healthy, conductive exercise when you're getting feedback and you're learning together. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we build into these dysfunctions. Dysfunction number 2, fear of conflict. Fear of conflict, if you're not willing to put yourself out there because of the absence of trust, then you're probably going to have this fear of conflict where maybe you don't challenge ideas or thoughts. It doesn't mean that you make them personal. That's a big deal. You don't want to make it personal, but it doesn't mean that you sort of sit there and be complacent about things and not challenge things. Because if the whole team is not participating fully, then there's this fear of conflict taking place, Lencioni would say, and you're not challenging the idea, so you're not getting the best ideas. People are sort of sitting in the meeting and they're saying, okay, I'll let this person talk. I don't want to cause any ripple effects or problems. And meanwhile, you might have been sitting there with the best idea. So you really want to make sure that you're challenging ideas during interactive sessions, because otherwise, you know what happens after, and Lencioni mentions this, after the meeting, everybody's talking behind your back or others' backs, and there's all this gossip and backstabbing that's going on. That's not going to create a positive team environment, right? Fear of conflict means you also stay away from controversial topics that might be very important to the success of the project. And if you're not engaging, then you're disengaged. So if you're not engaging, then you're disengaging. And time's wasted with avoidance of issues and protection of turf and status, that kind of thing. So you really can take these and you can just flip them around and try to have interactive meetings. Avoid the politics and back channel because you're being transparent. You are talking about controversial topics and you're working your way through them and you're learning together. You're also not making things personal in those meetings, but sometimes there will be a little bit of pushback from parties, and you got to expect that. So dysfunction, fear of conflict, your role as a leader is that you prompt healthy conflict while protecting people from harm, right? So that means that you have certain ground rules, and if you see things getting a little bit out of control, you step in with that. But you got to be a little bit patient with that as well, that we're not always just jumping in so that to avoid a conflict. So not to step in too soon is important. And as I said, always make the problem the issue, not the person. That's really one of Edwards Deming's premises, basically the quality control engineer that really sort of one of the ones that got lean manufacturing really going back in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. The leader needs to encourage conflict and disagreement within the bounds of it, leading to creative solutions. So you need to be able to encourage conflict and disagreement, but with a focus on achieving solutions. That's what you're after. You want the best for the project. This is about the best for the team, which is to optimize for the project, not the individual. Conflict's natural in work groups engaged in construction project. We've got our own things that we want to do, but we want to optimize for the project. So we want to bring that aspect up and try to get people thinking as far as success for the project instead of success for themselves, right? So we need to Make sure that we are able to resolve quickly to keep relations amicable and stable, but still encourage those points of conflict, which will help to pull out the best ideas, right? And we need to have considerable energy to be devoted to managing conflicts, right? So we want to be managing conflicts about the project, not about personal relationships and that sort of thing. We don't want to have all this gossip and backstabbing going on. And really recognizing the difference between productive conflict and personal conflict, right? Productive conflict is good. Personal conflict is not good. And that leads to us being less productive if we have too much personal conflict. So it's dialing that to the right level and keeping the focus on looking for the best options and best ideas. And you know what? Sometimes in the middle of it, I think of what Jim Collins pulled out about Admiral Jim Stockdale in his book, Good to Great. You must maintain unwavering faith that you can and will prevail in the end, regardless of difficulties, and at the same time have the discipline to confront the brutal facts of your current reality, whatever they may be. What's your project team? Where are they at right now? What are the brutal facts of that reality? What are the things that we're going to have to do to pull ourselves out of that? What are we going to do to build stronger relationships? Have healthy conflict on our projects, not unhealthy personal conflict. And so part of it is recognizing wherever you're currently at in your project and your project team status and working to re-steer the course on that. Dysfunction number 3, lack of commitment. Commitment involves clarity and buy-in. We've talked about SMART goals in previous videos: specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, time-bound, and having commitment towards that to be successful. A team that fails to commit creates ambiguity. We're not clear on things. We're not sure about things. And when we're unsure, what are we committing to? And then you get a lack of commitment, a lack of buy-in to what's going on. Watch as windows of opportunities close. We become indecisive. And think about change orders that take too long to decide, and it starts to have a ripple effect across our construction projects is a good example. If we have good processes in place and we have a team that commits, and we have brought in understanding between the trade partners, between the GCs, and between the consultants and owners, and we built a strong team that way, strong relationships where there's that trust. Remember, that's a big deal with change orders. If you don't have trust, then you have consultants challenging every aspect because maybe there's been something that brought up mistrust early on in the project. You want to build on a strong foundation of trust so quick decisions can be made and it doesn't hamper everybody's success on the project. So we revisit discussions and decisions over and over again. That's not a good thing. That's waste. That's waste. And so we want to have stronger commitment. Use SMART goals, as I said, which is helpful. Also, there's a great lean tool that we use, which is called reliable promises as a process to arrive at commitment. In other words, show me, don't tell me, right? Do as you say. Don't just say things. And that's what we need more of in construction. We need less of people saying, yeah, I'll do that, and they don't do it. They don't come through. We need more stronger commitments. So reliable promises, which was developed by Fernando Flores, used widely and considered a predominant lean tool. When do we require reliable promises? All work that is done is based on commitments, right? So when we say a lack of commitment, or Lencioni says a lack of commitment, well, we need to strengthen that, and we need to have a tool to do it. Reliable promises is one way to do it. I'll do another video on this particular topic on its own, but just to give you the gist of it, it really is trying to get into strengthening that commitment, not hammering somebody till they submit to say they're going to do something when they have no intention of doing it, having them the ability to say no, and then you can ask why. There's a negotiation that takes place, and it strengthens and clarifies the path forward. So you can sort of look at this chart and get the idea that, there's a request. There's clarity on conditions of satisfaction and time. That's tying to SMART goals: specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, time-bound. But also this negotiation, basically the customer and the performer. And again, that could be the GC, that could be the trade partner, that could be the client, that could be the contractor. It depends who's providing a service to whom. Request for an offer and a negotiation. So this is where the performer has the ability to say, no, it can't be done in that time period. And then you have the ability to say, why not? What are the conditions that we need to satisfy? And reaching a mutual agreement on that negotiation, then of course the performer performs the work and we check it and make sure it meets our conditions of satisfaction on time. So we have a process in place that we follow. And that makes it easier whenever you've got a framework for developing these kind of situations. And that's something that we don't do enough of or think enough of in construction. We might just hammer at somebody till they say yes, but are they committed to doing it? And if they're not, well, then it would have been better not to do that, because it just means we're going to be let down at the last minute. It's going to cause a ripple effect across our project. Better to find out if there's some constraint that's preventing that early on in the process. Number 4, avoidance of accountability, as Lencioni would say. A team that avoids accountability creates resentment. For those who have different standards of performance, we have to have some accountability for those that we expect to do the work. If people make commitments and there's no accountability, then after a while people really get lackadaisical about it. They get very complacent, and it encourages mediocrity. You miss deadlines. It puts undue burden on the rest of the team when somebody misses a deadline. And that causes, again, that circle of influence, a weakness in the circle of influence of the team. So we can think about that as far as if we have a team that actually accepts accountability, that's going to be a much more positive framework. Lean construction, last planner system, is a good system which actually puts in tools to have some accountability there. There's peer pressure, there's daily stand-ups, people report on what they're doing. Questions are asked why, because you have trust, you have not that fear of conflict, and then you get those discussions out in the open. And then you have people that are more wanting to not fall into a position where they don't come through with their commitments, and that makes them rise to the occasion better. That increases the engagement and motivation levels of the team when it's done well. And when there's an understanding when somebody couldn't do something because of X, Y, Z, the rest of the team does step up to help that individual in those circumstances. So it really helps from that perspective. And I've talked about motivation in the past, different motivational forces. And Last Planner system builds on those motivations for sure. Dysfunction number 5, inattention to results. Well, we definitely want to look at how are we doing? How are we performing? In Last Planner system, it actually responds to this. No wonder this book is very well received in the world of lean construction. We have our plan percent complete or percent planned complete. We're monitoring that and we're seeing that we have certain results. And if we're falling off, we've got, say, 75% of planned percent complete, and we've actually increased that from 54%. That's a positive result. If we've gone from 75 down to 54%, that's not a good result. But we are focusing on how we're doing, and we're tweaking, adjusting, iterating our plans. And we have a system that holds accountabilities in place, like daily stand-ups where people report on how well they're doing. And that gives us great immediate feedback. We can feed that into our milestone schedule and our master schedule to see how we're focusing in on overall project goals. That's important. So we want to make sure that we have that attention to results. Sports teams have very quick response to results, right? You miss the basket, you lose the game, you have a lot of quick attention that's played to the results. In construction, we have to make sure that we have certain indicators that we're looking at and we're monitoring and we're paying attention to see that we're actually working. Because when things aren't quite working, we want to make adjustments to that. It goes back to what I said Show me, don't tell me. Back up proclamations about intended success. It's why Deming was not a fan of, slogans that basically, exhorted that quality is job one or something like that. You got to have some statistical evidence that shows that you're improving. John Wooden, one of the great basketball coaches that I talked about in previous PM tips on coaching and mentoring, he wanted every player to be their best self, following his pyramid of success. Now, he felt that if everybody was operating at their best, the team would, by nature, operate at its best. And sometimes luck would play a role and you might not be that successful. But overall, you would have highly successful teams, which he did. And so the results spoke for themselves in that manner. But in construction, we definitely want to have some opportunities and ways of measuring key performance indicators, results, and how we're doing, so that we can look at our processes, our systems, the team development, and keep tweaking and adjusting and making those improvements. So I think Lencioni's 5 dysfunctions of a team, if you look at them and you see where your team is at, and you look at what tools, tips, techniques, methodologies and frameworks that you can use to help improve the team, that's working on the project, that's working on the business, that's working on the team, and that will help you to run more successful construction projects. So I'm Tom Stephenson, wishing you a wonderful day. If you enjoyed this video, please click subscribe, click the notifications, leave a comment. Maybe you've had some interesting results on your projects using some tools and tips and techniques that everybody can benefit from. So please take the time to leave a comment, and I'll see you next time. Wishing you a wonderful day. Bye for now.